This morning we're going to talk about inventory and the fact that it is a high-risk asset. You know, an inventory really is, your biggest asset in retail, but it's also your biggest liability or your biggest expense. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we mitigate that risk. And so my name's Dan Holman. I'm with Management One. Management One is the foremost leader in inventory planning or merchandise planning. For 30 years, we've been using big data to forecast inventory, to forecast sales, to about a 95% accuracy. We haven't found anyone that can compete with that sort of level of accuracy, and so we puff our chest up a little bit. We are the leaders in merchandise planning. And so when we look at the thousands of classifications that we work with across North America, we can give you really accurate information about where things are going, where things are trending. We can be the early adopters in bringing on new products. When we look at outdoor specifically, we can see where the trends are up or down and get in and out of inventory as fast as possible to maximize our return on investment and minimize that risk. And so this morning we're going to talk about how retail really does equal inventory, and inventory equals cash flow. And if we want to have a better retail store, if we want to have better inventory, and if we want to have better cash flow, we're going to focus on the three metrics that improve our retail business, our inventory position, and more importantly, our cash position. Those metrics are markup, markdown, and inventory turn. Markup, how much we price, how much we sell our goods for. Markdown, how much we bribe customers with. And turn, how efficiently we can roll through inventory. So I'm going to give you lots of little metrics, lots of tidbits today. Don't take copious amounts of notes if you don't want to. You can go to or2017.com, enter your name and your email address, and I'll send you a copy of this presentation along with my notes. So or2017.com, and we'll give you a copy of this presentation. Actually, we'll give you a copy of all three presentations that we did this weekend, along with those notes. So, inventory. We're going to talk about markup, markdown, and inventory turn. Does everybody know how to calculate inventory turn? So, inventory turn, annual sales divided by average inventory at retail. Your accountant probably calculates turn, retail sales, and cost, and that's an inaccurate equation. Turn is calculated, retail sales divided by average retail inventory. And so if we can improve our turn, we can carry less inventory. So let's talk about markdowns. What do you think a 2% reduction in markdowns generates in additional cash flow in your store? What about markup? What does a 1.2% improvement in markup generate in additional cash flow in your retail store? Turn. If we were able to turn our inventory over at a less than 1 turn improvement, what would it generate in additional cash flow in your store? Bringing the right inventory in at the right time, in the right category, will generate more cash flow. How much do you think that represents? Being able to flow the right amount of goods in the right category at the right time. What you're seeing, well, what you're not seeing on the screen because it's small, I'll tell you what you're seeing. You're seeing a real $600,000 store. So before they started using merchandise planning, before they started to forecast sales and inventory, started to utilize an open-to-buy strategy, they were $609,000. And so we talked about this 1.2% improvement in initial markup. So this store went from 57.5 to 58.7. So how did they improve their initial markup? What steps do you think they took to improve initial markup? The number one contributor to improving initial markup is open to buy dollars every single month. Why? If I have money to spend today on goods today, is there a chance that I'm going to buy those goods from an ATS list, on an available to sell list? Am I going to buy on discount? Possible. Right? I'm able to price goods based on what they'll sell for, not based on a standard markup factor. I don't use a 2.2 time markup. I price goods based on what the actual value is in the customer's eyes. And so sometimes we get a 57, sometimes we get a 60, sometimes we get a 48. But we price goods based on what they're really worth in the customer's eyes. And so we improve that markup by 1.2%. This store operated with about a 22% markdown. Markdowns that equated to about 22% of revenue. And so I talked about improving those markdowns by just 2%. We took them from 22% to 20%. We talked about gross profit. We talked about flowing the right amount of goods at the right time in the right category. So this store went from $609 to $870,000, about a 43% improvement in revenue. We grew revenue by flowing the right amount of inventory in the right class at the right time. We fed categories in the store that had demand. We starved the categories that didn't have demand. We didn't continue to buy because we thought we should. We didn't continue to buy in categories where the vendor added 10% to our buy this year, where he said, hey, you want to grow your sales by 10%? You bought 10,000 from me last year. Let's buy 11 this year. We looked at categories that had demand, where customers were coming in and feeding that class or that category. And so in a year, we achieved about a 43% improvement in top-line sales. Now, I'm showing you one of the best examples in top-line sales growth. Why? Because we all have this misguided belief that more top-line sales equals a better store. It's a fallacy. I don't need to do more sales. I, in fact, would like to do less sales and make more. Wouldn't you? Yes, you would. If I could improve your sales and make more money at the end of the day, you'd be a happy camper. If I could do the same amount of sales and put more money in the bank, you'd be a happy camper. Would you? I do $1 million in sales this year and I put 4% more in the bank. Are you a happy guy? $1 million in revenue year over year. Doesn't change, but I put 4% more cash in the bank. You happy? Right. Right. At the end of the day, it's about what goes in the bank. It's not what my top-line sales are. We all want top-line sales growth, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to throw top-line sales away. I'm telling you that we used an example here of a store that grew by 43% to grab your attention. They got on planning, they fed the right category at the right time and grew sales from $600,000 to almost $900,000 in 1 year. Now, the other most significant factor that you're going to see in this analysis is they started with $400,000 in inventory at retail. A $600,000 store carrying $400,000 in inventory, which means they had about a 1.49 turn or 1.5 time turn. And so remember I said one of the ways to improve cash flow is to speed up turns. What will it do if we improve by less than 1 time? Well, we lowered their inventory in the first year by $41,000. So about a 10% improvement in inventory. So what does that mean? It means we spent $22,000 less in cash to achieve sales growth. They have less inventory and more sales. This is not a fictitious store. This is a real store. Less inventory, more sales. How? By feeding the categories that have demand. I sound like a broken record. Feed categories that have demand. Fill customer closets, not stores. Doesn't matter how big your store is, it matters how big your customer's closet is. Isn't that our intention? To satisfy their wants, not our own. So in this case, this store grew, their cash profit, pre-expenses, grew by 47%. Not to mention, we saved $22,000 in real cash dollars in inventory. to plan this store. So, how do we do it? This is all about how we buy. This is all about buying. If you want to improve the metrics in your store, if you want to improve the overall performance, the stability, the sustainability in your stores, buy better. So, what happens if we buy inventory too early? It gets stale. What's the number one thing that drives sales in your store? New merchandise, fresh goods. Fresh goods all the time. If I land more than I have the ability to sell, what happens? That inventory starts to age. The older it gets, the less it's worth. If we land inventory too late, we miss sales in the early part of a season. So if your season starts August 1st and you land goods August 30th, you lost 30 days worth of sales. You can't quantify that. There is no quantification for missed sales. We just know if you land goods late, you miss sales. And if you miss sales, you lose market share. Every time a customer leaves your store without a bag, you are losing market share to someone else, regardless of where your store is. Doesn't matter if you're beside a Walmart. People walked through your front door predetermined to buy. And every time they leave without a bag, you are losing market share. And so again, this comes back to how you buy. If you have the right inventory at the right time, in the right class or the right category, you're going to earn a sale. The worst salesperson can sell the right product at the right time in the right class. I'm not advocating for bad salespeople. If you buy too much inventory, how do we fix that? How do we correct when we overbuy? What do? Right. We take markdowns. Markdowns kill our cash. Remember I said markdowns in this store were 22%? Can you think of another expense in your store, single expense, that's greater than 22%? Wages, 9 to 12, 9 to 13% of revenue. Occupancy, 6 to 9. Advertising, 1 to 3. Is there an expense greater than 22% of your total revenue? No. Want to fix that? Want to mitigate that expense? Want to reduce that expense? Buy less inventory. In fact, buy less inventory, but buy it more often. Don't come to the show and buy $100,000 worth of product when you only need to buy 50 today. Buy 50 today and buy 25 again and again and again and again. I want to buy more from your vendors, not less. I want to feed categories with more inventory, not less. But I want to land it at the right time. So, how do we mitigate markdowns? By buying what we have the ability to sell. By feeding demand, not smothering it in our stores. What happens when we smother the demand? We lose sales. Whenever the supply is greater than the demand diminishes. Do you believe that? If you have more than you have the ability to sell, what happens? Sales start to diminish. The number one thing that stops customers from buying: choice. They lack the certainty or the confidence that they're making the right decision. The more choice you have, the harder it is for me to buy. You're a curator of all the best things that you find in the show today, this week. You're buying for your customer. You can narrow those choices for her, for him. Mitigate this markdown disease, eliminate it before it happens. I'm going on a bit of a tangent now. Inventory. If you buy too much of it, your cash flow suffers. How many times have you looked at your P&L and it says you made $50,000 and you turn and look at the bank account and it's negative or zero? Your profit and loss statement says you're making money, but there's nothing in the bank. Right? It's because your cash is sitting in inventory. Where should it be? It should be in the bank. Cash needs to be in the bank so that you can utilize it to feed classes in your store that have demand, that are growing, that are earning you more market share. If you buy too little inventory, it has almost the exact same effect. You miss sales. If you don't have enough inventory, you miss sales. If you miss sales, you lose market share. If you start to lose market share as sales are dwindling, what happens? I become cash poor. Right? There's nothing worse than a cash poor retail feeling. My account says I'm making money, but I don't have any cash. My retail inventory coach is telling me to go buy men's shirts, and I don't have any cash. It's because it's tied up in women's, or it's tied up in equipment, or gear, or socks, or underwear. It's not in the classes that are performing the best. You need that cash in your store to earn market share. If you're missing that cash, if you don't buy enough inventory to feed these sales, you then miss this opportunity to build more cash. Remember, I said cash flow comes from turning inventory over and over and over and over again. Right? If I don't have the ability to land more inventory, I have this inability to generate cash. Our retail stores are supposed to be cash-generating machines. Not museums, not beautiful galleries. Isn't it great when someone walks into your store and says, "You have such a beautiful store," and then they leave without buying? Nothing bothers me more than when people leave without buying. My goal is to have a beautiful store, but it's to sell product. Inventory equals cash flow. No cash, no inventory. No inventory, no cash. These two things are so closely tied together that they have to take the gross majority of your time, of your investment. This is not an easy thing to manage inventory. It's in fact one of the most difficult things to do. But it has the greatest impact on your financial position and performance. To the degree that you can manage your inventory effectively, you will deliver sales performance. You will earn market share. You need to have this objective input over your inventory. You need to drive buying decisions with data, not emotion, not what you bought last year, not this idea that I'm going to do 10% more in sales, so I'm going to buy 10% more. It's a fallacy. You should, in fact, buy less. How many people feel like they have too much inventory? Yeah. Most stores feel like they have too much inventory. Why do they feel that way? They have no cash. It's not about the inventory, it's about their bank balance. It's about their inability to pay themselves, or to pay their vendor on time, or to pay their staff. It's not about inventory, it's about cash. And you have to understand how closely connected these two components in your business really are. Now, I've given you sort of lots of information. One of the most important things you can take away from today is balance and flow. Balance and flow, the cadence in which you have to land inventory. And so when I talk about balance, I mean having the right amount of inventory at the beginning of your selling period. You can call it a week, a month, a season, doesn't matter. As long as you have the right amount of inventory to start that season, to get yourself off on the right foot. Flow is about how you feed those sales as the season starts to progress. Flowing the right amount of inventory at the right time. Recognizing where the trends are in your store. Recognizing that you need to feed classes that are turning over cash. How efficiently you can turn inventory back into cash will demonstrate how much sales growth potential you have. I do want to grow sales. I totally do. You know, the average sales growth that we see with retail stores is about 27% in net profit, in gross profit dollars, about 12 to 18% in year-over-year sales. Lots of stores in the 40% neighborhood, lots in the 25%. The average is going to be about 12%. In the first year, do you know why? Because in most cases, we spent that year getting out of inventory. because we have bought a little bit, because we've not bought appropriately, because we've let something or someone else guide our buying instead of our customer. Customers dictate where we buy. We feed their desire, their want, right? We measure their votes. Something's in your store for 90 days and it hasn't sold. What makes you think it's going to sell in the next 90 days? She or he already voted no on it. How many times a season do you see your customers? Once, twice, 4 times? If you see them once a season, they damn sure shouldn't see the same inventory this year or this season as they saw last. Fresh goods drive sales. They earn market share. I use that word, earn market share. What do I really mean? I mean, we steal market share. We take market share from competition. We take market share from big box. We take market share from Amazon. Seems silly, doesn't it? But it's the truth. Why? We live in a tactile world. People still have to try on. They have to touch. They have to feel. If I want a blue t-shirt, I can go find 1,000 of them online. If I want to make sure it fits, I'm going to come to your store. Right? So, what would a 10% increase in cash flow do for your business today? So, not 20%, not 40, just simply 10%. If I can improve your cash flow by 10% today, what would it do for your store? If you want to know, go to, oh man, that was so good, I wasn't sure I was on the right slide. If you want to know, go to or2017.com. Put your name and your email address in there, and I will do this free analysis. I'll show you where you're missing business. I'll show you what categories are being over or underfed. I'll show you, in fact, how you benchmark, how your expenses, how your revenue, how your sales performance is as it compares to your competitors. I'll show you the benchmarks of where you should be. I'll show you where your turns should be. First, I'll show you where they are, and then I'll show you where they should be. Thank you for coming. Any questions? I'm going to hang around for a little while. If you do have questions, come and talk to me. Again, thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us this morning. Appreciate it.